What is up, gang? X-Teen Featurette. I'm Chris. I just watched Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling on Netflix. You might not know that I'm a huge fan of Rocko's Modern Life. It was my favorite Nicktoon, and I loved all the Nicktoons. But Rocko's Modern Life was always my favorite because it was very crass, and even from a young age, I was that way. Whenever I learned about the new special, the reboot, the Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling on Netflix, I was very excited. Finally came out today on August 9th. I'll be posting this later this weekend, but I wanted to share my thoughts because I loved it. And I wasn't sure how I'd feel at first, but then it made me very introspective, and I appreciated that. So there are spoilers within, but first, just the overview. It's like Rocko's Modern Life. It left off with Rocko's house being rocketed into space, and they have been in space for the last 20 years, and this is where the reboot picks up. The beginning has a lot of really awkward references to, it's like a series of references to the original Rocko's Modern Life, and it's almost like they're trying to shoehorn it in to fit all of the references that they wanted to. But I mean, I'm okay with a flashback series of, a cartoon from 20 years ago. Filbert finds a remote that says re-entry. It's stuck on Heifer's butt, so for the last 20 years Heifer's been sitting on the remote that could have gotten them home. They get home and then they have to deal with, life being completely different than it was in the 90s when they left Earth. The series of things that happens whenever they get back to Earth was really depressing to me. Rocko says, fellas, I don't think we're in the 90s anymore, and it just made me really sad. I was like, I don't know if that's supposed to be sad or not, but it's just what has happened? And there's a weird series of modern technology and pop culture references. Really, really big man's portrayed as a Marvel type character. He's beating Rocko in the face while Rocko was wearing 3D glasses in the theater. Kind of a lot of comics where Rocko used to work is no longer a shop. It's a kiosk. And they're 3D printing a comic book. Rocko is run over in a stampede for the new O phone. And it was just you get the sense that Rocko is overwhelmed by all of these new changes. So then it kicks into the new opening sequence where it says reboot. There's a huge neon sign that points down, which is very common in Rocko's Modern Life. Actually, whenever I draw and stuff, I do that a lot. I'll have weird neon signs, and I guess I got that from Rocko's Modern Life. But there's a neon sign that points down, and instead of O-Town, it says reboot. The original opening sequence had a bunch of things trying to get at Rocko. It was chasing him through O-Town. This one has a bunch of scary technology and stuff trying to basically hurt him. There's a laptop that's trying to Pac-Man his face. And there's some really creepy security cameras that are just following him. That was weird. Rocko's house lands back where it came from. So Bev Bighead greets Rocko. She's always loved Rocko. Rocko's sitting on his couch trying to unwind after all these, huge changes, and he's looking for his favorite cartoon, the Fatheads, and it's not on air. And Bev's like, yeah, it hasn't been on air in a long time, not even any reruns. And Rocko's like, well, why? Why is my favorite cartoon not on TV? Bev says, people these days want their cartoons in widescreen. And I'm like, okay, so I see what you're doing there. You're saying, why are these Nicktoons not on TV? They're amazing because they're not in widescreen. People don't want to watch that garbage anymore. It's really sad because, that's probably completely true. That's why you gotta buy these things whenever they come out, because I can watch Rocko's Modern Life whenever I want to. I don't have to wait for Netflix to hopefully come out with it. But that's neither here nor there. Rocko's like, well, Ralph, Bev and Ed's son, Ralph Bighead, there's a whole episode about him being the creator of Fatheads. Fatheads is a cartoon. They beat each other over the head with meters, parking meters. Really funny, right? So Bev says that Ralph left a long time ago to go find himself. There's this weird flashback. So Ralph is no longer here. And that's how Ralph was before. He was really mysterious. He created this really popular cartoon, but then it was he was nowhere to be found and Rocko had to find him. This is pretty much the same deal. He's trying to find Ralph this time to get him to make the Fatheads again. So Ed Bighead still works at Conglom O, We Own You, basically, like, something happens, like Ed messes up something, the stock market crashes. Ed tells us that he's really happy. In song, he tells us that he's very happy with his life, blah, 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 you know, and it's all because Rocko is no longer on Earth. Ed Bighead comes home one day to the news that Conglommo stock has plummeted, it's his fault, he gets fired, his house is going to be demolished, and oh, by the way, Rocko's back. So he's having a very bad day. And while he's processing all this, Rocko's like, hey Ed, can you find Ralph? Like, what's going on? So Rocko just wants the Fatheads back. That's the entire premise of the episode. He just wants his show back. Ed says, Rocko, the Fatheads aren't going to solve the kind of problems you have. And Rocko says, Ed, the Fatheads weren't just a cartoon. It was a culture icon that resonated with millions of people. There's a huge audience out there clamoring for the show to come back. So, you know, I get what you're doing. You're pulling on my heartstrings here. Like, that's exactly how I felt about Rocko. Like, you know how I feel about Rocko's Modern Life. I've been looking forward to this for so long, and it's like, yeah, I do identify with Rocko. Like, I just want the Fatheads to come back. I just want Rocko to come back. Like, why can't you just bring it back? So Ed sees a business opportunity in the fact, you know, Rocko is like, all these people want it. And Ed's like, yes, they do. I can make money off of this and get my job back. So they go to Ed's former boss to pitch the idea of bringing back the Fatheads. And he's like, yes, I will do that. But his boss says, I'm going to get my team to do it because they have computers and they can do it for cheap. So then our old friends, the Chameleon Brothers, come out. And, you know, I love the Chameleon Brothers. Leon and I... I love the Chameleon Brothers. Rocko's like panicking. He's like, if Ralph doesn't do it, the Fatheads are gonna flop. Like, it's gonna be terrible. So then Rocko and Filbert and Heifer take flight in a drone. And Bev Bighead gives them like a stack of postcards from Ralph, and you know, gives them clues as to where he could be. They take flight in a drone to go try to find him and recruit him and be like, hey, come bring the Fatheads back. There was a lot of really cool references whenever they went on the flight around the world in the drone. They went to Roswell, and there were some aliens, which is not something that happened in Rocko's Modern Life, but that is relevant in pop culture today. They went to the North Pole and saw the elves. There was Daddy Elf, and then the little Jingle Elf. I don't know. He didn't have a name. He was just the little one, the little guy. Is this little guy yours? Then they also saw a sad clown in an iron lung. You might remember that wasn't an actual character, but it was in the episode where Rocko had credit card debt. It was what Rocko always wanted to own, a sad clown in an iron lung painted on velvet. So he asked the sad clown where Ralph was, and the sad clown did not know. Back at Conglommo, Ed's like asking the Chameleon Brothers, shouldn't these guys be, you know, using pencils or something? To the team of animators that the Chameleon Brothers had hired. The team of animators was literally a group of depressed worms. They're like, there's like a shot where the Chameleon Brothers are like, you know, cracking whips and stuff. You just hear whips snapping. It turns out the Chameleon Brothers are hitting the whip sound effect on a sound effects machine. And they're like, get to work, you worms. And it's literally a team of depressed worms working on computers to make these CGI Fatheads. So Ed's like, you know, shouldn't they be using pencils or something? The Chameleon Brothers like, welcome to the 21st century, Bighead. We have the best computers, yeah? We can make anything in a pointless and cheap way. That's a really sick burn to CGI, and I like it. So Rocko and the gang crash land in a desert, and it doesn't take long before they start seeing mirages, as happened in another episode. But there is a ice cream truck that shows up. The ice cream truck is selling Fatheads ice cream, and we find out that it is Ralph. From the moment that we see Ralph, Ralph now has eyelashes, and I'm like, I knew from the moment that I saw eyelashes, I'm like, that's not Ralph, something's up. Ralph reveals that Ralph is now Rachel. And I was worried at that point. I was like, is the show now using transgender people as like another item that they're showing is change? Things have progressed in the last 20 years, and now transgender people are like, that's the norm. Is that why you're throwing this in here? Or is it because you genuinely want to incorporate the fact that there's a transgender character? And I think that they genuinely wanted to incorporate a transgender character because of the reaction from Rocko and the guys. I think what Rachel said was, I'm not Ralph anymore, I'm Rachel, and then she let down her hair, it was like pulled up because she was serving ice cream. So, you know, Rachel has eyelashes and long hair because it's a cartoon and it's signifying that, you know, Rachel is a girl. Okay, fair enough. And I'm like, the reaction from Rocko and, you know, Heifer and Filbert, they're like, oh, awesome, cool. And then they just completely move on, like, immediately. And I was like, okay. Like, so Rocko has a problem with, you know, his cartoon changing, but, you know, whenever the creator of the cartoon is like, by the way, I'm a girl now, Rocko's like, awesome, so can I get the cartoon back? What's going on? I thought that was really awesome. I liked that. Rachel agrees to go back and do the fatheads. Ed's boss sees the CGI fatheads and hates it, pushes the worms out the window. Rachel goes up to Ed and says, I'm not your son, I'm your daughter, and I'm finally happy. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty profound for, you know, a silly-ass kid's show. And Ed screams, I have no daughter. So that's like, you know, that's showing that Ed is not okay with Rachel's change. But it was also a reference to the original show, the episode where we met Ralph, because Ed screamed, I have no son, because Ed was ashamed of the fact that Ralph was an animator. So, you know, Ralph had a very successful cartoon, and Ed just did not accept that. And I thought at the time, Ed not accepting his son's, like, career choice or his life choice was like really symbolic of some deeper things, and I think that it's really cool that they delve further into it and they take the character who was, you know, they had problems with their parents accepting them for who they are, and they made that character, they took all of the, you know, implications and similes, like all of that stuff away, and they just made that character trans. I thought that that was cool also. I just wanted to point that out. Ed says that he can no longer be on board for this project, not after all of this. He's like, I can't do this anymore, not after all of this. And Heifer's like, change? He's holding up like a $5 bill. Anybody got change for a $5? He wants something from the vending machine. It's like, why? Why can't you accept your daughter for who she is? Because you can't accept change. That is the premise of this episode. And I'm like, this is way too deep. Rocko's Modern Life is about like Choky Chicken and Phlegm Rock. It's not about like deep existential problems and things like that. I'm like, this is like, but then it's like, okay, Rocko's Modern Life is not about that. That's what the old Rocko's Modern Life was, but this is change, and you should accept change. And I'm like, this is just like blowing my mind right now. It's like so meta, because it's like, as a fan of the show, I'm sitting here like contemplating all these things, and it's like, wow. Yeah, I'm okay with all these other changes. And then like Rocko is basically like a mirror to all of you 90s nostalgia fans. Somebody says to Rocko, like, why don't you just go back to the 90s where you belong? It's like that's, you know, all these like nostalgia elitists. My husband, he never watched Rocko's Modern Life, but he is a total like nostalgia junkie, and it's like, I don't like any sequels, I don't like any reboots, you know. He likes some sequels and reboots, but just generally, you know, I don't like any sequels, I don't like any reboots, nothing new is good, I want everything to be old. And that's exactly what this episode is confronting. And I'm like, this is so completely, like, mind-blowing to me. Bev Bighead is happy for Rachel and is trying to convince her, like, narrow-minded husband to just be accepting of their daughter. So Rachel, like, has a change of heart and decides, you know what, I will do the show. The winds of change tell Rocko and Ed both that embracing change is the key to happiness. Ed and Rocko are both alerted that they're doing the Fatheads reboot at Conglamo. They're having a screening, and Ed's like, I'm not going. Rocko stuffs him in a potato sack and like, yes, you're going. You're going to go support your daughter. And Rocco's excited to see the Fatheads, but Rocko ends up hating it because it's not what he wanted. It wasn't the old Fatheads. Everybody else loved it, though. It's making tons of money, and everybody in the crowd is cheering except for Rocko. Rocko's left behind. Rocko complains, but Ed says, you know what? We can't be living in the past. If we don't live in the now, we miss out on lots of important stuff. So Ed finally realizes, you know what? I need to accept my daughter. It was very heartwarming. It it had way too much of a moral story for me to even grasp. But there were the shocking elements to Rocko that we're used to. Shocking element 1. Ed still works at Conglom. Whenever the stock market crashes, all the employees start jumping out of the window, but they're not committing suicide. They have parachutes. It shows us that afterwards. People are just jumping out. They're like jumping ship, but they're not really jumping ship. It's implying that they're committing suicide, just like stock market brokers do. I'm like, are they really showing these people committing suicide on this cartoon? But no, there's parachutes. I was like, okay, this is ballsy. That is Rocko's Modern Life. I appreciate that. Shocking element number 2, when Bev is showing Rocko all the postcards that Ralph sent her, there is a racy photograph of Mr. Bighead in there in a very compromising position. Shocking element number 3, Rachel's ice cream truck says, "Eat this" on the back of it. Very large. Shocking element number 4, towards the end, Ed and Bev are eating Fathead's ice cream. Bev looks at Ed and says, "Oh, Ed, this one looks kind of like you in the morning." Followed by a very long, suggestive lick. So all in all, I absolutely loved this episode. At first I was nervous because of all the forced references to all of the characters from the original series, but I feel like it was necessary because it's been 20 years since the freaking show was on the air. And I just feel like as a fan, I was happy to see all those people. I was happy to see, Really, Really Big Man. I was happy to see Peaches. I was happy to see the hippo lady, the old turtle that lives in the water tank, Gordon the Foot. As a fan, I suggest this. I love Rocko's Modern Life. My favorite Nicktoon of all time, by far. If I can open my mind to change and accept the new static cling, then I think that anybody can. Thanks for watching my weird review of Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling. See you guys in the 90s. Also, Filbert is a vlogger named Fishsticks96, and he's like, "Hey, subscribe to my channel."